All right, well, let's get into our panel for this evening. Overcrowding in South African prisons has been a problem for many years, with an estimated population of 154,000 against 107,000 bed spaces last year. Correctional Services Minister Pieter Groenewald has told Parliament that his department will need around 60 billion rand to build new facilities to ease the pressure. We're going to get more details around with that overcrowding, certainly as we get into the festive season. What do conditions look like inside some of our correctional centres? We're joined by the Correctional Services spokesperson, Mr. Singabakho Nxumalo. We also are joined by the South African Prisoners Organizations for Human Rights President, Mr. Bhudu is in studio with us, and Mbokodo, Support for Restorative Justice and Reintegration Director, Ms. Yoliswa Keswa, is in studio with us. Via video link, we're going to get the first-hand, I suppose, perspective by ex-prisoner Collin Khumalo, who joins us there via video link. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for speaking to us. Such an important discussion. Perhaps, Singabakho, let me give you the first bite here. We did see, of course, the Correctional Services Minister responding to questions in Parliament and saying that 63 billion rand is needed for prison facilities. That's a big number, right? That's a large amount. Explain to me how you would describe why this amount of money is necessary and what the overcrowding really looks like. So how desperate of a situation we're seeing?
The figures you presented have increased. We are now sitting at an inmate population of 160,800 against a bed space of 107,000. That translates into an overcrowding of just over 50%. That is never desirable. Hence, that response to Parliament saying that we needed billions, because we've been trying all manner of things, creative ways, renovating some of our centers and then increasing the bed space. But I think we are reaching a point where now we really have to look at now brick and mortar to say now we have to build new structures. We've been doing that, but not at the pace at which the inmate population is growing. And you look at the remand detention. I checked the figures this morning. We're over 50,800. These are people who are literally sitting in our facilities, go to court, come back, cases being postponed, or there's no movement at all. So it's something that requires everybody's attention to say, what do we do about the issue of crime in this country so that we can have less people being taken to correctional facilities? Hence, even previously, we had a discussion on some of the offences, petty ones, to say, are we able to decriminalize some of them so that we can have people who really require rehabilitation to be in our facilities.
What would that mean, decriminalizing something? Let's explain that.
Some of the petty offences, you look at it to say, do you really need to send someone to prison for being a shopkeeper? I'm not talking about a habitual person who keeps on going back, but some
shoplifter.
Yeah, sorry, a shoplifter. Some call it crimes of need. To say those people, do we really need to take them to correctional facility? People who are addicted, to drugs and other substances, do we need to take them to a correctional facility, or we must send them to rehabilitation centers that specifically deals with, drug addiction? So these are type of, the questions that we're asking ourselves, but also inviting even the general public to say, let's look into these things and see if we can have, a real look into them, so that as we move forward, we are then able in saying that correctional services is able to admit people who must be taken through rehabilitation so that they can benefit from it, go out there, be change makers, and make a positive contribution to society, rather than people who keep on coming back because they spend like 3 months. We have quite a number of people who are in our facilities for 3 months just for being in the country illegally. What do they benefit by being in our facilities for 3 months? A day we spend 477 per inmate. But if that person is to be given medical attention, that figure goes high. If that person is to be given other services, that figure goes high. So these are some of the discussions that we're really pushing out in saying that we need to have a real look. Yes, our mandate is clear. We continue to render our services very resilient, but I think the time has come to give a fresh eye in terms of what type of offences must really be considered to be criminal.
I think that what I take from what you've said as well about some of those smaller offences is, for the viewer, there's this perception that Okay, we're going into the festive season. We've got a lot of our freedoms and our liberties here, particularly at this time of the year. We're away from work, a lot of freedoms, and one wrong decision can land you in a position where you now are talking about you finding yourself as part of that group that is adding to the numbers. And so perhaps we take advantage of this opportunity and bring in Collin, because you are a former inmate yourself. And I'm keen to hear from you, Collin, about, as we talk about the overcrowding in some of our correctional facilities. You've lived it. Talk to me about what correctional facility you were at. And what that actually looks like on a daily basis when you are in an overcrowded cell, for instance, how that impacts the daily life of an inmate, and if things get particularly difficult around this time of the year.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone on the panel, and good evening to you and your listeners. Just before I get to answer your question, I want to say and concur with the spokesperson of the Department of Correctional Services. But you know, just to say to you and the listeners, the issue of overcrowding in our country can never be brought to an end, because there is no solution to ensuring that those that are released from prison are reintegrated economically in terms of working economy, the economy of the country. That is our problem, because you can be released and go out. But if there's no one who's going to employ you because of a criminal record, most of these guys, they go back to what they know, which is crime. Because number one, you are stigmatized by your family, by your community, you're stigmatized by those you are looking for employment from. And maybe you're even stigmatized by the same departments that released you, because you can't find employment. So it's a problem. You're fighting something that prisons will be built, and more prisons are going to be built, because these guys that come out of prison, they've got no economic opportunities outside, regardless of their degrees and skills. I'm speaking at the spokesperson knows it's difficult for us. I mean, I'm speaking from practical experience. There's a lot of our brothers and sisters with skills. They can't break through. It's hard for them. So when the country speaks about addressing crime, sometimes I think there need to be a radical economic, political will and legislative will to say, how do we create opportunities for these guys together with the young people that need employment? Because what happens when this offender comes out and they don't find employment, when they recruit, they don't recruit all people, they recruit the young people to be part of their gang. And when they get arrested with these young people who are not working as well. So it's a socio-economic problem that is there. That's why it will need a radical thinking and implementation of those decisions from a political head, whoever is in charge. Because talking about it is not going to solve anything.
Yeah, and I think that the issue around, Collin, I think the issue around prisoners reoffending is something that we certainly are going to get into with Yoliswa as well. So just talk to me about the lived experience, though, of the daily life inside an overcrowded prison, because that's where I want to start the focus on, and then we'll get to the other issues around how we deal with the turnaround of prisoners finding their way back in the system.
Yeah, I mean, during this time when it's overcrowded, obvious, maybe it's supposed to be 30 in a cell, you're like 100, 120, you're using the same toilet, same shower, same everything. Others have to sleep on the floor next to the other prisoner when they wake up. So it actually causes a lot of conflict, because they've got small space, and there's many of you. Number one, you'll be fighting for that space. You are congested in one cell. You are a human being. You want to be free, but you are congested. And then this type of violence, and people end up stabbing each other or maybe fighting unnecessarily because you are congested in one cell. So life in an overcrowded prison is not. It's not. You cannot say it's life in prison. It's a life in prison plus hell.
You know, Miles, I want to bring you in because I'm trying to make sense of the numbers here, and perhaps what Collin is doing is maybe doing an estimate. But when he says you've got a cell that's supposed to hold 30 people but is holding 100, and then Singabakho says, well, our overcrowding is at about 50% of where it should be, right, in terms of the beds that are available. But that didn't sound like a 50%. That sounded like a 30 or 70%. Overcrowding in that one particular cell. I mean, do you concur with the numbers that you're hearing either from Singabakho or from Collin?
Well, the numbers, I cannot put my thumb on the polls, because the numbers they give us is their numbers. And the numbers we get from other so-called independent institution that is part of the Department of Correctional Services is their numbers. We don't have the numbers of a third party which is absolutely not connected to the Department of Correctional Services, and there's nothing much we can do about it because we do not have the financial, material, infrastructural, let alone the managerial resources to say, look, now we support the department, the Judicial Inspectorate on Correctional Services about the numbers and the figures. We hear what they say and we will have to take it as it is and give it to the public, those who ask us about those numbers. But the numbers is escalating all the time because there isn't and there was never a plan to deal with people before they commit a crime, getting into the system, and when they are in the system, deal with them so that when they get out of prison, never go back there. It's more like a conspiracy theory from where I'm sitting. Let's not rehabilitate, train, educate, and skills them because they must come back and keep the job for the correctional officers, because if you do the right thing, they go out, they never come back, and then you will end up having to retrench some of the correctional officers. Have you ever heard the department retrench officers? No, never. They want, instead they are, how many percent? 45, 35% need more correctional officers. It's job creation, and it goes with the many other things.
And I see Singabakho chuckling at that, and we'll get into that. Around the festive season, what are the complaints that you get from some of those that you represent within our prison facilities, especially around where overcrowding is concerned? I can imagine it's a difficult time emotionally for them because they're away from family. I don't know if there's a lot of sympathy for that from South Africans, but talk to me about what that looks like.
Well, I'm glad, you know, after so many years, I've stopped speaking English. I'm reading from the book, Coming from the Belly of the Beast. Here is a letter that came yesterday, WhatsApp, to the Westville Medium A Remand Detention Center, to the attention of the area commissioner. Food crisis in Westville prison raises serious concern. We've got 6 paragraphs here. I will only pick on 3 of them as we move on.
Okay, maybe just one, yeah, because we've got to get through quite a lot, yeah.
Over 85% of inmates are chronically sick. They require daily medication as prescribed by doctors. However, the lack of nutritious food has made it impossible for them to take their medication effectively. You know, since the 10th of December, inmates have been served only 1 meal per day, consisting of 1 stump with excessive water and poorly cooked. Number 2, cabbage with excessive water, poorly cooked, no bread, no breakfast or lunch sometimes, and so on. This is what they say to me. It's not Miles Bhudu, you know, and that's it. I'm reading from the book. It's
interesting because just recently we were talking about a video that went viral on social media of someone saying that life is so comfortable inside prison, 3 meals a day, education, and then that letter saying no. At this particular prison that you're mentioning, Westville, 1 meal per day. And I think, Yoliswa, this is where I'm going to bring you in here. You do a lot of work with, I suppose, the restorative justice and what happens after the time is served, right? The rehabilitation and saying, well, let's get you back in the community. But are our facilities rehabilitating our offenders?
The facilities, from what I know and where I stand, rehabilitation inside is, you know, a 2-to-2 chances because of the overcrowding, because of the work, because of the influence. But nevertheless, that being said and done, when they are supposed to leave the correctional facility, there's a reintegration, like putting them together, the offender and the family. Now, here's another thing that causes friction, that causes congestion. When they are released from incarceration, we as the community, we do everything in our best to provoke them and send them back. And it becomes a vicious cycle in terms of they're unemployable. Nobody wants to employ them, right? And then what is this person going to end up doing? Stealing, reoffending. And even if they try, family members don't accept them holistically. They send them back to where they come from. Typical example, I've got a son, we are sisters. My son is already occupying his room. When he comes back from incarceration, he's going to want his room back.
It's gone.
I'm going to do everything in my power to provoke him to go back so that my son stands in a comfort zone. So there's a lot of things that offenders face that are stumbling blocks in their way of rehabilitation, in their way of progression, in the way of they can try all they want. If they don't have jobs, if the families are not working hand in hand with them, trying to assist them, you know, it's a futile exercise.
What's the number? What is the, Yoliswa, just the number in terms of the stats, in terms of how many of our prison population actually finds its way back into prison? Is that, I believe that number to be close to 90%?
Close to 90%. It's a huge number. And hence there's overcrowding. And hence we are looking, you see, also the officials, they can try all they want, but if we are not helping, if we are not assisting, if we are not looking into smaller things like, for instance, there used to be in restorative justice, whereby if my child would steal a Miles TV, why call the police? If I can afford, and I'm sure that my child did it, why don't I refund Miles his TV? And it still goes to court anyway, right? But now the child is not sentenced. As long as I am willing to pay Miles TV, it's only when I refuse to adhere to the agreement, then the
but
law...
a crime has been committed. This is
Exactly.
the reality of it, is where a crime is committed, there has to be a legal process. Perhaps you want to come in here, Singabakho, because a lot has been said there that
Yes.
your department benefits from the high population because you're able to keep the jobs going.
You know, we often say for as long as we want to shy away from tackling crime, why are people committing crime? And rush to point fingers and saying, SAPS, take these people. Correctional services lock them up and never bring them back. We'll never find solutions.
Sure.
Instead, we'll have these numbers keep on increasing.
Escalating.
And as a developing country, is it ideal to be building more correctional facilities, or we should be building institutions of higher learning or other developmental structures? I don't think building more prisons is really going to assist us.
But that's what you're aiming to do.
So
You've asked for 63 billion.
We have no choice. We have reached a point where we've got no choice. We've got to build more facilities because the figures for over the years are showing us that the inmate population is increasing. What is even worse, it's young people. And they're getting long-term sentences, meaning they're going to grow old, mature in prison. By the time they are released, what is there for them to live for? It's something that requires the entire society to look into it instead of people washing their hands and saying, you know what, these people must be removed from here. We don't want to see them. Instead of saying, you see a youngster going out of way, don't just look, shy away. Because our research shows us that people come in for petty offenses. The second time they come back, they've committed serious crime. The third time, that's when they're getting a life sentence because it's not one offense, two offenses, it's multiple offenses. So, which therefore says something needs to be done instead of just saying SAPS Correctional Services do something.
But why request 63 billion rand to build new facilities when there is, of course, some discussion around that there are older facilities that we have that are not in use? I mean, Robben Island, for instance, has been talked about as a facility that's sitting there and could be used, correct?
Some of those old facilities, you cannot keep people there. They're inhumane. The Constitution is very clear, and Correctional Services is very clear that you must keep people in humane conditions where they can receive services because their rights must be respected. So if you are taking people to a facility where the roof is not even stable, you'll be taken to court for that. So we've had some of the facilities where we had to close them down, refurbish them so that at least, they're in a condition that, are usable. But for us, we even go further in saying that we've been suffering serious budget cuts. In the past 5 years, Correctional Services has suffered 12 billion budget cut, 12 billion. Yet, in 4 years, we've managed to attain unqualified audit finding, and our performance going as high as 86%. But we're saying, yes, we've been resilient, but something has to give. We have to be assisted because what we're dealing with is not just a correctional services problem. It's a challenge for the entire country. Hence, we keep on reaching out to national church to say, come on board, assist us, because the system may buckle up under pressure and may find ourselves under...
You know, we obviously need to address even the letter that Mr. Miles Bhudu got from an
and we've
inmate.
responded today.
Yeah.
We did issue a statement saying that it was a problem of yesterday and it was addressed because one service provider failed to deliver coal because in that facility we use steam to cook in the kitchen. But fortunately in correctional services, they are not far from each other. Another kitchen at Umzinto could cook for Medium Aid Westville, and inmates did receive food. As I'm sitting here today, meals are served as per the schedule.
Yeah, because I'm already imagining the sort of violence that you're getting at a time like this, right? The sort of violence that you see in a cell that is overcrowded, people are eating once a day, the frustration, the anger, it's
impossible. The day inmates get 1 meal a day, you will see what will happen to this country. That is never true. Miles Bhudu knows that. If you were to say to inmates today, you'll not get 3 meals, 1 meal, I'm telling you, he knows what will happen.
What does that mean? Exactly. What does that mean?
No, there will never be stability in that facility. There will never.
Okay, well, we're going to take WhatsApps, right, and we'll let you have an opportunity. 072-110-5584 is how you send us a WhatsApp. It's the festive season. A lot of us going to be enjoying our liberties over the next few days, some of us even away from work. But what does it look like for those that unfortunately no longer have those liberties, perhaps as a result of decisions that they've made, and now they're in prison, overcrowded prisons? What do they look like over the festive season and what needs to be done about that? 072-110-5584 to send us a WhatsApp. Let's see some of those WhatsApps that have come in. One that says, I am Zach Modise, a retired National Commissioner of the Department. Building more prisons might be a short-term solution. The fact is South African citizens are committing more and more crimes. Let's find work for our fellow unemployed citizens first. Secondly, we need more diversion programs from incarceration. Example, electronic tagging, diversion of youth from mainstream prisons. And thirdly, incarcerating only hardened criminals or prisoners. Consider private-public partnership and don't kill the concept because of Thabo Bester. A big blotch on the reputation of the Department of Correctional Services there. Opa in Benoni says, good evening, Newzroom Afrika. I fully agree with the prison spokesperson. Let all those who are arrested for petty crimes be released. Crimes like theft. Most people who are in prison did not do the crimes. Most of them are innocent. Trust me. Okay, Opa, thank you for that. Patrick Blau in Oudtshoorn says, good evening, lady. Let them work for their food and keep these youngsters and keep those youngsters or first-time offenders in specially identified medium B prisons where they can grab the chances given to them to U-turn their lives for the better. Prison gangsters do not love to work. They hate it. Give them a spade, a wheelbarrow, bricks and sand. This means fewer murders and fewer initiatives of youngsters and gangs. And I reckon you'll see definite changes within the space of unruly and dangerous prisons. Patrick, thank you so much for that WhatsApp. Wasiso says, hi, Naledi. They need to start using containers to accommodate those prisoners rather than wasting money. Young people are starving without jobs. That's why most of them end up in prison. That 63 billion must be used to create jobs for our prison, for our people. Sure, containers. Collin, let me bring you in here because, you know, the point was made earlier about the problem that we have is when you have 90% of ex-offenders finding their way back in the prison system, it says that we've done something incredibly wrong. You want to say that? You say that number's wrong?
I dispute that 90%.
What is the number? What is the number?
South Africa doesn't have a measure, and I've questioned that paper. Has it been peer-reviewed? Because if you say 90%, it will mean almost everyone within the correctional system is a repeat offender, and that is not true.
Okay. All right, Collin, it's Singabakho disputing the number 90%, but officially that's what we've got. 90% of offenders re-offend and find themselves back in the system. Talk to me about stories that you've seen, and I'm looking for now individual sort of case studies that you've seen of young prisoners that find themselves in the system of a petty crime and then are hardened over the years. I mean, have you seen that yourself and sort of the journeys that has been walked for that particular individual that you want to talk about?
Once again, good evening. By the way, I'm not only Collin, I'm representing an organization called Fear for Life, which I founded in prison. So just to put it out there,
okay.
My colleagues, we know each other very well. We work in the same space.
Yeah.
What I can say is what everyone has been saying. This when you're a hardened criminal, you don't start by being hardened criminal most of the time. You start with petty crimes. So most of the guys in prison, they came in, they were young, 2 years, theft, they join gangs, or they got more knowledge, they go outside and then they commit more serious crimes, they come back, they do your 15 years, and then they go back, they go out, they come back with their life plus sentence. So it's as Miles was saying, it's a vicious cycle. It's difficult to stop it. Personally, I've come to a view myself, my sister and the colleagues, to say rehabilitation must be done away with. Because if it's how do you spend billions rehabilitating people then that you can't help on the outside? The system that you go and work when you are in prison, go and work for your food, go and work for where you're sleeping can work, because going to school and everything, that is where we find these young people that come, they're young, they're juveniles. And then they go into smaller crimes, they go to school. When they go out, they can't do anything. They come back again. So it's a sad, our story is a sad story. It's not a good story. The 90%, we can't dispute it, because when you go there, I got programs around every week, every day in prisons. You go there, you see the same faces and the same people that they say he was released, now he's back, she was released, now she's back. So it's a sad story. I think our problem is that there's a lot of interest in how these things are run. So when there's a lot of interest, it's difficult to come up with a solution to be implemented, because you'll be maybe stepping against other people's interests and other things. So, but in reality, we have to say rehabilitation. You have not worked for this country for as long as you existed. Some of us who came out and shined is because we decided, it was a personal decision to say, no matter how hard it is, I mean, we all know each other, I will hold on, I won't go back to crime.
Okay.
They can be strong. You understand? So we need to look at everything, even the criminal justice system. I mean, as the spokesperson was saying, the society is saying a crime was committed. This person stole a TV, but the restorative justice can kick in, and then this TV can be. I mean, given back to the victim. But now, because the law says you must be arrested, you must go to prison. So then the justice system in that regard must be looked into, and society need to be educated to say, can we try and educate society about this type of justice, so that when it happens, no one must say this person was, unless for serious crimes, the person must go to prison.
It makes,
imagine you going to prison for stealing a loaf of bread.
Yeah, it says once you're in, Yoliswa was saying there as you were speaking, Collin, that you're stuck in a vicious cycle, and things just get worse. But we're taking calls as well, 01059460110 to be part of the conversation. Musala is on the line in Qwaqwa. Musala, good evening. Thank you for calling in. What are your thoughts?
Evening, how are you?
I'm well, sir. Talk to us.
Yes, I would like to comment on the topic today. But my problem is why government doesn't give traditional leaders. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we're listening to you. Go ahead.
Yes, why government doesn't give the traditional leaders some cases, because some of the cases are easy. Common assault and domestic violence. Yes, and I don't know why, because if you look at our country now, there's a lot of people who are waiting, must go to prison. If you look at the state capture, I think the prison is waiting for more than thousands of people.
Yeah. Okay. I remember a few years ago there was a big conversation around the traditional courts and something that needs to be explored. So a really interesting point that was added there by yourself, Musala. When we come back, we're going to start talking about what are the recommendations? What is it that we need to be doing right? Because it's going to be really important to say, okay, where are the opportunities for us to get that restorative element of rehabilitation right here in the country? Stay with us. We're back in a moment. You're still watching Newsfeed PM, the late edition with myself, Nalendi Mula. And we continue talking about overcrowding in our prisons. This is, of course, after the Minister for Correctional Services said to Parliament that the department would need an estimated 63 billion rand to build new prison facilities because of the overcrowding in prisons. We're talking about really what we're doing wrong, certainly what we're doing right in the prison system in South Africa, and we continue that conversation with our panel. I must say that this is something that has boggled my mind, because over the past few weeks we've been watching the story of illegal mining. That has been such a big debate in the country. Stilfontein, we saw over 1,000 miners come to the surface there, and then you've got the police waiting for them to take them to prison. When you've got 1,000 alleged illegal miners coming out from one site, where are we putting them in the system?
South Africa has an overcrowding reduction strategy, which is being implemented by all parties within the criminal justice system. But when you start talking about remand detention, these are people who are attending to court cases, not yet sentenced. That's where the country is feeling the pressure, because the frequency within which they are coming, you can't even predict it. Go to all our facilities along these mines, or where this illegal mining is taking place. In the main, though, you find foreign nationals. You go to Modabi, over 90% foreign nationals are there for illegal mining. And the pace within which those cases are moving, I don't think we are likely to see those numbers reducing further. You go to Pavian Sport, a painful sight, because there you go to the youth center, over 70%, it's youth, foreign nationals. These are young people who are below the ages of 18, 17, who are there. They're also involved in allegedly in terms of illegal mining. So hence we find ourselves in this situation where we're saying to government, we need more money, because you ask yourself, why are these people even sent to correctional facilities? Perhaps they committed crime.
So what should we be doing?
Hence they're with us.
Yoliswa, what should we be doing then?
I think, number one, we are very lenient on the entrance of these foreign nationals. One. Two, we are going to spend money to accommodate foreign nationals that are illegal in our country, that are destabilizing our country. It does make sense. It's retrogressing. We're not going forward, we're going backwards. If they are caught, they have to be deported back to their homes, and make sure that where they came in, they close that place. You know, they whatever means they use to infiltrate the country, the government has got enough structures and intelligence systems to see how do they come in and close there, because, as you are saying, they'll come in, we'll build. Yeah, they'll come in, we'll build, and then what?
And the taxpayers footing the bill. I want to take a quick call. Kevin is on the line in Pretoria. Kevin, good evening. Thank you so much for calling. What are your thoughts?
Good evening.
Yes, talk to us, Kevin.
On the issue of overcrowding in prisons, I think we need to understand the root cause, instead of trying to deal with the outcome. The problem, I think it starts with in the communities that most of these criminals are actually coming from. So most of our communities, especially the township communities, actually glorify crime. And, wherever you find thieves, cash in transit, kingpins, etc., you find prostitution. And where there's criminals, gangsters, etc., there's always going to be prostitution. It goes hand in hand, So if we address the issue from the communities for starters, right, then we know that we are breaking a community of people who are going to be educated and that are going to occupy economic spaces which are otherwise being occupied by other people coming from externally other countries. You understand?
Yeah.
But if we try to build more prisons, while we are breaking more criminals, in the townships and other areas,
sure, we
are obviously promoting, criminality at a greater scale. And how many prisons can South Africa build as a country? They can only build so much. Yeah. So the communities where the SAPS police are coming from, even the recruitment structure of SAPS itself is actually built to recruit mostly from the townships. And in those townships, you'll find that myself and yourself are having grew up together in the township, I become a policeman, you become a criminal. So how am I expected as a policeman to actually arrest you, yet you are my colleague and we grew up in the same area?
Yeah,
and,
I understand you. Yeah.
So all those other factors are actually contributing towards this high criminal spike. And I think the other panelists did mention that the police are under-resourced and we can't be accommodating criminals from all over the place. So,
Kevin, you made such an interesting point. And one of the key questions that I've heard asked multiple times is, as we strive to build more prisons, are we building more community centres where there are recreational facilities in these communities where these young people are coming from, so that they have other ways to go, and that the only aspirational figures that they see are not just the criminals in their community? But Mr. Miles Bhudu, let me come to you, because we need to start thinking about what now, right? What do we need to get right now? If you were in the shoes of Pieter Groenewald, what would your priority be?
Well, thank you very much. You know, I met Mr. Groenewald on the 13th of August this year. That is after 29 years I met a minister. The first minister I met was Sipho Nxumalo, whose soul must rest in peace, and he wanted to co-opt me in the Department of Correctional Services. Then I went back and spoke with the board members, staff members, with my family, and with some of our member supporters, followers, and admirers. And then they said, Miles, we need you. You don't go there. We want you outside here so that you could use this organization to play a watchdog role. That was in 1994-95. I met the minister. I took documents to him, and I thought the minister was listening to me. And seemingly, he never listened to me. And these documents had recommendations of conferences held by the minister long before, in his wildest imagination, he thought that he was going to be a minister of correctional services. It was a document called Prison Work When Prisoners Work. It was a policy document by the DA, produced in 2007, and they took that document and dominated it because it came from...
What did it say? What did it put forward?
Turn prisons into industrial hubs where they work. Those who are trained immediately get to work inside there. They earn a stipend, and out of the stipend, they start to pay rent. They start to put money away. They start to put money into a victims' trust fund so that the victims of crime and criminals get compensated in accordance with what the Victims' Rights Charter said. And all fall on... The reason why I took that document there, our input, whilst we were wanted and whilst we were loved by the ANC when they were in government many years ago in 1994 as a portfolio committee, every month we were called in to make presentations. And we made some of those presentations, and DA was sitting and making notes, and they came with a document, Prison Work When Prisoners Work. We came with another document called A Country Work When Ex-Offenders Work. That document was also dominated by the Department of Correctional Services. And the other document that we spoke about was, look, you guys spend hundreds and thousands and millions of taxpayers' money to round up ex-offenders all over the country and took them to a 5-star hotel and a conference facility, St. George. And we spent almost 3 days there working on what needs to be done in terms of ex-offenders not easily falling back into the criminal justice net. There were 10 recommendations made. I said to him, these are the recommendations of the Department of Correctional Services. It's not ours. Can we revisit the recommendations? Can we revisit all this? And he never came back to me up to today. And you know how painful it is, because I found out later it's a personal thing between Miles, Bhudu, and whoever get to the Department of Correctional Services. That is why we are chasing Mkonto Wesizwe to the brink, because we read their cardinal pillars, and there are 4 pillars that could assist us implement all the recommendations that were made by the Department of Correctional Services over a period of 30 years.
Okay, we've heard the recommendations from Mr. Miles Bhudu. We'll hear final thoughts from Collin, Yoliswa, as well as Singabakho on the other side of this. Stay with us. 63 billion rand needed to possibly build new prison facilities in South Africa. That's what we're discussing today. How do we deal with the issue of improving what is provided by correctional services? And we continue taking your thoughts on it as well. Let's take a look at some of the WhatsApps that have come in. And there they are. Debuho says, manning our borders should be prioritized and all illegal immigrants will be taken back to their respective countries. 47% of the offender population is foreign nationals. Debuho, Thank you so much for that. Yoliswa also in studio with us agreeing with that. Evening at Newzroom. I'm so sad about this thing of building more prisons. About 20% of prisoners are arrested for crimes they did not commit. We do not need to build rehabilitation centres. We need SAPS to do proper investigations. Vuyo Mbamali sending that one. Anonymous says, good evening, people of South Africa. Prisons in SA have become 7-star hotels and not what they were meant for. Hence, we have repeated offenders. They must go back to what they were, prisons. Okay, Anonymous, thank you for that. Robert says, evening, to overcome the challenge, there is a need to implement alternative sentencing options, increasing parole eligibility, expanding rehabilitation programs, and improving pre-trial procedures to reduce unnecessary detention. Thank you so much for those WhatsApps that have come in. Yoliswa, recommendations here. What do we need to get right?
What we need to get right is South Africa as a country, we need to get our act together. In terms of the foreign national flooding our country, I was surprised by the remark that was made by one of the senior officials, Yoliswa. He said, "Do not tell me about Zamazamas. I don't hear a thing. Those guys know for a fact that in Lesotho they will never do what they're doing in South Africa." You know, that was like a slap in the face. So it means we are handling crucial things that are eating up the wealth of the country, that are destroying our country. We are handling them with kid gloves. He said they know for a fact in Lesotho, they will never do what they're doing in South Africa. And if they come here, they shape up and they become law-abiding citizens. So it means as a country, we have to go back to the drawing board and tighten our borders and give our people priorities in terms of, now this money is going to build prison facilities because of people that infiltrate our country are expanding every day. It's a vicious cycle. The more we build, the more they come. You know, so let's come up with a plan that we are closing the borders and building. And we know that if we build once, then it's done.
Yeah.
But above all, let's put our foot down. If you come to South Africa with nonsense, you go back to your country and you are not going to be able to come back again.
Yeah. All right. Collin, I'm going to let you have your last bite here as well. You did mention earlier that you do a lot of work with ex-offenders yourself. What is it that you need to improve on the work that you're doing?
Hey, Mina, I can tell you now, I was part of that conference Maz is talking about. Those recommendations, the last conference, ex-offender conference, was made by us. I remember we left as the steering committee of about 12 individuals. Maz will correct me and Singa will correct me. We made those recommendations. I then decided, I'm saying this now public, I then decided to pursue my own things. I said, you know what? Ex-offenders will not be assisted by the system now. And I decided go into business and with those opportunities, employ ex-offenders. I employ ex-offenders when they come to my company, they're ex-offenders, I check their rehabilitation method. If they're rehabilitated and there's an opportunity, I employ them, we work. Because sometimes I discover that we have talked about this thing for a long time. There seems to be no one who wants to listen and take action. So some of us who are called into this, for us, we were prisoners of this thing of helping ex-offenders. So we'd rather do something in the fight against crime. And just, if there's an opportunity, luckily, I had an opportunity to work with some big corporates and say, listen, Collin, we can work with your people. This is what we need you to do. So we're in that space. If there's an opportunity, I say, come work. In my company, I just prioritize young people and ex-offenders so that I know when a young person is employed, there's a less criminal on the street. If an ex-offender is employed, less criminal on the street. I want to appeal to corporates. I know it's not easy. I can't appeal to government because the corporates, if you have, I'm not saying prioritize ex-offenders, everybody's looking for a job. But if you can, hire that person to be a cleaner. If they can fix a car, they're qualified. Let them fix a car. If they're a carpenter, that's the best we can do for the country. Try and give these guys an opportunity to work.
Yeah.
Most especially our guys.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's a responsibility that all of us can take on, truly. And that's what you call active citizenry. Singabakho, I'll let you have the last one here.
Yes.
I mean, you've said, give us billions so we can build facilities, but many of our guests here, Miles, Collin, saying, your department just doesn't listen. right? That recommendations are shared, and getting to the crux of the matter is dealing with the rehabilitation and the quality, therefore, of how we get these offenders back into society, that they stay out of the prison so that you don't have to build new facilities. But you're not listening.
Rehabilitation does work in South Africa. On a monthly basis, we hand or give out houses built by offenders. So it's true offender labor. And these are not just small houses, big houses, where we're demonstrating that there is capacity, where we're even reaching out to the people out there and saying, a person coming out of a correctional system is a human being. Just give that person a chance. Hence, we've even said to corporates and all other entities, there is no law in South Africa that says a person with a criminal record cannot be employed. A person that is employed, an ex-inmate, will tell you wonderful stories. It's therefore a matter of saying, I think as a country, how do we then rally behind the fact that we need to deal with crime, but also we don't shut the door on those that have committed crime, to say how to assist them so that they don't go back into the life of crime. Then we'll have less people coming into our facilities. The resources that we have can then benefit a greater society because we offer accredited training. A certificate that an ex-inmate will leave with from our facility carries the same strength as coming from a TVET college, an institution of higher learning, anywhere. So it's therefore a matter of, are we able to change the mindset? How far do we go in terms of public education? So that at the end of the day, people get to understand that fighting crime is not just a responsibility of SAPS and DCS, but it's everybody's responsibility, so that the strategies that we have, yes, they work. The self-sufficiency and sustainability has saved the state millions, but we need to do more so that we can have a different country.
I'm out of time. One last comment from you, Mas.
Look, fighting crime, preventing crime, combating crime and the causes thereof is something that needs to be put on the political agenda. And the immediate solution in the immediate and short term is to release those lifers that has been rotting in prison for the past 25 years, 30 years, 200 years, and what. They sit there, and every time there is recommendations and these profiles that must be sent to the minister, and it takes 2 years. And after 2 years, the recommendations and the profile is sent back. These are people that has been in prison for too long now. Can the minister please release them to just open up that valve of overcrowding?
Yeah, there's a lot that we can talk about, and unfortunately we are out of time. But thank you so much, and I appreciate the time that all four of you have given us, because this is incredibly important work. It's not just about dealing with overcrowding, but it's also ensuring that the citizens that are in our society are rehabilitated and people that contribute.
And conscientizing the communities.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Singabakho Nxumalo, who's the spokesperson for the Department of Correctional Services, Mr. Bhudu, SA Prison Organization for Human Rights as president, Ms. Yoliswa, Keswa, who is Mbokodo Support for Restorative Justice and Reintegration. She's the director, and Collin Khumalo, their ex-inmate, also doing great work with the ex-offenders in the country. We're going to take a short break. We've got your headlines on the other side of this short break.